Good morning. Monday morning. Woo, day 149 of my morning walks. How are you doing today? Thanks for coming along with me. Wow. It's good out here. It is a federal holiday in the United States. But you have to understand, in my lifetime, it wasn't always a federal holiday. It wasn't a federal holiday, technically, until 1971. And before that, the day was known by its original name, Decoration Day. It was 1868, after the Civil War, when it became formalized as a day of special remembrance for the men who lost their lives on the battlefield. So by extension, today is also a cemetery day. Again, the tradition was to go out to the cemetery, lay flowers, lay wreaths, anything else to help remember, not forget. As a genealogist, Cemetery Day, Decoration Day, Memorial Day is a special day. As a genealogist, I'm a cemetery guy. So that's what we're going to talk about today. First is the cemetery where my parents are, my dad's sister, my aunt, and her husband, and their infant son. My father's parents, my grandparents, my grandfather's brother, my grand uncle, and his wife. So that's the main family cemetery, and I'm ashamed to say I haven't been out there yet. I didn't make it. Just my life is just too crazy and busy. Nearby is another cemetery with markers from my maternal grandmother and my other uncle. And what's interesting is that uncle, on my mom's side, he's actually got two markers. He's actually got another marker in a cemetery up north, the one I talked about earlier, where him, my maternal grandfather, and his parents, my great-grandparents, plus children of theirs and cousins of mine, that's where they're buried. And then if you go farther south into farm country, you'll go to the cemetery, the Lutheran cemetery, where my paternal grandmother's family is. Many relations there. Many people I remember very well and miss. So my great-grandparents. And one other Minnesota cemetery is the one where my other great-grandparents are, my paternal line great-grandparents. And that's a Catholic cemetery. So those are the cemeteries in Minnesota. But I can keep going. Go south to Iowa. So my great-grandparents on my mother's side, maternal grandmother's parents, born in Maryland and Kentucky. They're buried down there in a little town called Watchier, Iowa. His parents and family and relations, most of them are buried in that other town that I've talked about, Muscatine, Iowa, on the Mississippi River. The Civil War ancestor, I have three. So the one in Minnesota, the one in Muscatine, and then the other one, again, the one that was born in Virginia, and then moved to Kentucky, and then moved to Iowa. They're in a town called Sigourney, Iowa. So yeah, there's three main cemeteries in Iowa. But I can keep going, go back to Illinois. Again, going back to my maternal line, my great-great-grandparents are there with their relatives in a little place that's basically dried up and disappeared called La Prairie Center, Illinois. Now, I haven't been there since 1982. I mean to go back and see them again. I can keep going. We can go back to New York State. There is a cemetery where other ancestors are buried, on a place called Featherbed Lane, the Staco Cemetery, which is a religious cemetery. And then there's the municipal cemetery in Westerlo, and then another cemetery and another. So I've been to 4 in New York State. Now I know there are others that I have not actually been to yet. And I can keep going. Religious cemetery, Baptist cemetery, where my ancestor was an elder. And this guy, he was in the Revolutionary War, and pastor of this church. He's famous enough, him and his wife, to have an official state history marker in Kentucky. And I said, I can keep going, back to Virginia, and so on, and so on. So what cemeteries haven't I been to? Well, that's where it gets a little muddy, because the tradition in Europe is that human remains decay, and they don't last. Farmland is at a premium. Pasture land is at a premium. So there's a tradition in Europe, especially Germany, where you reuse the spaces. So there really aren't any markers per se in Germany that I can go visit, but I know what the cemeteries are and where to go, so we'll do that someday perhaps. But there's one last cemetery I want to talk about, and that's the cemetery in France, the one who matters here today, the one who did die in battle, my cousin John Morrison. John Morrison was a bright, talented, intelligent, successful. He studied engineering. He went on to be a lawyer, an attorney. He gave it all up to go into the army. And eventually, a building was named in his honor after his death. I don't know what happened to that building, the Morrison Building at Fort Knox. Don't know. But it happened, and he's buried in France, and I've now made plans to go see it. How exciting is that? Can't wait. And perhaps, if I do this right, I will go there on the American Memorial Day. For one, this is a great time to travel because there's so much daylight. But because he's the one family member in the immediate generations who died on the battlefield in Germany during World War II, that would be really meaningful. So we're gonna make plans to get that done. It's going to happen. So thank you for listening to my stories about cemeteries. If you haven't been to your family cemeteries, your family graves, your family plots, your family lots, take the time. It can be very meaningful. It can be very moving. It can be very peaceful, uplifting. Yes, they are places of death. They are places of mourning. But they're also there to remember them living. We are there to remind ourselves of their lives when they walked this earth. Go, visit, pay respect. Have a great Memorial Day in the United States. Have a great day wherever you are. Thank you for listening and watching. Bye for now.